Okay, so today I'm going to do a little tutorial for you guys about some basic information about InDesign and how to use it. So, let me get a Finder window. So, normally when you're using InDesign for the IDS, you're going to start out by getting on the server, so I'll just do that really quick. Alright, so now that you're connected, you can tell you're connected because it's green, you will go to Finder and then do Command K. This is just the Mac process. If you have a different type of computer, you'll just have to do the way that you connect to a new server instead of Command K. And then this like thing that you type in, that will be in the guide that we give you. Anyway, once you've connected, you can see these folders, CEO, editorial, and production. Those are the ones you're only ever going to use on the design desk. So looking in the CEO folder, there's a lot of folders, but it's pretty clear what each of them is. If you look in the fall 2021, this is where all of our pages are. So for this tutorial, I'll just go ahead and use a page. So let's just use the news page. Sometimes if you're working remotely, the server can be a bit slow, so you just gotta be patient. All right, so here we have our news page. This is obviously already done, but I will just make a new one and go ahead and recreate it so you guys can see the process. Here we have a blank document. So I'll just go ahead and go over some of these tools over here on the left. These are, I'll just go over the most important ones that you're going to use the most frequently. So this one here, this is the pointer. It's just like a regular cursor. You can use it to select things. If you have like a box, you can use this cursor, just drag it around, and you can just, navigate around just like you would normally use your cursor on any other application. So InDesign does have an option for a second cursor, which is the direct select one. And this direct select, if you want to alter an object or only select part of it, you can use this tool. So if I want to only grab this corner, I can select it with this tool and just drag it all around, and the shape will change. I honestly don't use this tool very often in InDesign. It's more of an Illustrator tool for me because that's more when I'm making shapes that actually need to be manipulated. I don't really think you'll need to use this tool very much if you're designing a page, but maybe if you want to get a little crazy with some different design things, maybe that'll come in handy. But anyway, so a lot of these tools you don't actually really need to know. I know InDesign can look kind of intimidating, but if you just stick to the tools that I'm going to show you in this tutorial, it should be a lot more manageable. So the next important one is this T. It's the text tool. I guess it's technically called the type tool. But once you select it, you can see you can create a text box if you're good. If you just drag and make a square, you can make some text boxes. And you can type. Let's just fill this with placeholder text, which is a handy feature. So InDesign handles text really well, and it's one of the reasons it's more used for a lot of texty documents, whereas Illustrator is more used for visual things and like vector illustrations and cute little things. So the really big benefit of InDesign is this text tool. It's pretty sophisticated. It handles the text really well. So I'll just show you a few text related tricks. One nice thing about InDesign, we use columns in our design a lot. You can see here on this page that there's a lot of columns. If you look closely, you'll see that even though we use this purple grid in the background, the columns don't really line up with that. We actually use a different method. And that method you can see up here in this little area, there's a little box with different columns in it. And if you just bump that up to 2, it'll automatically format this text box into 2 columns. So you never need to worry about making 2 text boxes and linking them, because when we design with the IDS, that's the spacing that we want all the time. So it's just a lot easier and a lot better for aligning things. So you may have noticed when I changed that to 2 columns, this little red plus appeared at the bottom of my text box. That's a bad sign. That means that there's text in here that's not showing. It's being hidden because the box is too small for the text. So that's a problem that, or not a problem, it's just a thing that you're going to have to deal with a lot when you're designing these pages. So there's a quick fix for that. If you double click, if you mouse over this little box on the bottom here and you double click, it will automatically distribute the lines equally so that all of your text is shown in the most economic way possible. So you can see if we increase this to 4 columns and the red plus is here and you do that same trick, it will automatically make sure that the fewest number is left over. So a lot of your last touches on your page are going to be things like this, where you're taking care of this little 2-line deficit. So some tips to fix that. This isn't really in different paragraphs, but normally, let's just go over here for the example. Like, for example, if this will normally all start out with a kerning. This is called kerning, this one here, of -10, and you can see that with a -10 kerning, this story is way too short for the area it's in. So the designer who designed this decided to make it a kerning of 4 because that would fit everything in perfectly. There's other things you can do too sometimes. So let's see if we do this. There's only 1 line left over. That's often going to be a thing you see. So if there's only 1 line left over, you can go ahead and look for a paragraph that's really close to going over the edge. This one is pretty long, so the bottom line is almost all the way to the edge, so you can just bump this one up, and that 1 line moving down will automatically line up the end here for you. At the IDS, we have to make sure that the kerning is between -25 and 5, so don't go beyond that range. You can see if we look here at this text, if we go below, so this is -25, it's still pretty readable. You can see all the letters are next to each other. They got a little bit closer together, which is what the kerning does, but it's still readable. But if you go much below that, it starts getting weirdly squished like this. We don't want that, so don't go below -25. And then if you go above 5, oops, it gets like really spread out and it just looks weird. Like, we don't really want to have that kind of weird alignment in our text. So just that's a good rule of thumb, to stay between -25 and 5 for the IDS. All right, so there's a couple other things you can do with the text tool. Let me think. One cool thing you can do, if you hold down on a lot of these tools, it'll show you a new tool. This is the Type on a Path tool. So if you create, I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself with using the pen tool, but if you create a line, and we want to make this no fill, and you use the Type on a Path tool, where did that line go? Here it is. Then you can just type on a path and it'll go whatever shape you want. So that's kind of a cool feature. And then once you've done that, you can change these little lines to show where it goes, so you can determine where on the line it'll go. That's kind of a cool trick if you're going to do an art head or some sort of cool design typography thing. It's not really required to know, but it's just interesting. So moving on, this is the line tool, and it's just used for creating lines. Um, Usually we use 0.25 width lines. You can see on this spread here that every story is separated by a line. So these are all 0.25 width, and we just use those so that you don't get confused with which words go with which story. It's just used as a nice separator to keep everything all modular. So that's a good way to make those lines is with the line tool. And you can see that if you just make a line, it'll just go wherever. It's just going crazy, like every direction. When you make a line, you just want it to be either vertical or horizontal. So to make that happen, push down Shift, and it'll automatically go in increments of 45 degrees, and it will not be like a weird random 3 degrees angle or something. So always make sure to hold down Shift when you're using the line tool, or it might be crooked. Anyway, the next tool is the pen tool. This tool, you can use it in InDesign. Sometimes it's useful. I normally don't use it in InDesign because it's kind of hard to use, honestly, the way that it is set up. I find the pen tool in Illustrator to be a lot easier to use, just because the user interface is more toward like vector drawing and stuff. I only really use this tool in InDesign if there's a tiny thing I need to do. Like, for example, if I want to make someone look like they're cut out, but I don't, it's just a really tiny cutout and I don't want to go through the entire effort of cutting them out in Photoshop, I'll just make a tiny little shape that goes around whatever I want to cut out. But otherwise, I really don't recommend using the pen tool that much because it's kind of hard to manage. But it is still there if you need it, and you can use it for things like making type on a path like I just did. That's a good example of a good use for it. This is the, what's it called? I just call it the pencil. But this is similar to the pen tool, except it's just like a free drawing thing. You can draw whatever you want. Again, I really don't use this that much because it's kind of hard to control, but it is really good if you want to just sketch out an idea you have. Like, for example, if you're thinking about your spread, you just opened it up, you don't really know what you want to do, you can like sketch out, like, oh, I'll put this here, and then I'll put a circle or something. I don't know. But you can just sketch out what you want to do, and then it's really fast. The benefit of this tool is just it's really fast, and it's pretty easy to use. So it's probably easier than the pen tool if you're just using it for a sketch, but I probably would never use this in the finished product. I would just use it as a helper tool along the way. This tool is the framing, the rectangle frame tool. This is a really important one. A lot of times in InDesign, we will use images, and the way that you get your images in the spread is using this tool. So once you've created a frame where you want your photo to go, you will do Command D, or if you don't want to use shortcuts, you can go to, okay, yeah, it's in File, and then Place, Command D. So once you get here, you can I'll just look for a random photo. This is an illustration from earlier today. So, for example, if you're doing the story that goes with this, you'll place this in here. Now, when I place it initially, it's really zoomed in, so all you can see is the green. If you double click on it, you'll be able to see the whole thing, and you can tell it's just really huge compared to the actual size of the document. So an easy way to get it to fit in the box is if you go to Object, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally, and this will just automatically make the image the minimum size it can possibly be while still filling the whole frame you've made. And then just like with the text box, on your frame, you can double click this box and it will automatically fit perfectly around your image. So you can see the red line. It's kind of a subtle difference right now since it's the same size. But the red line is the exact same size as the blue line. So that's how we put images, and the benefit of having this tool is that you can easily crop images without having to actually crop it. If you mouse over this circle, you can just grab it and move the image, and it won't move the box, it'll only move the internal image. So sometimes it's actually annoying to use this type of frame because, for example, if you want to increase this in size and you just do shift drag, it will only change the frame size, it won't change the image inside of it, which that can get kind of annoying if you've carefully placed this like in the middle. This one wouldn't be hard to change, but if it's a more complicated image, sometimes it gets really annoying to place it again and again when you don't know what size you want. So an easy fix for that is instead of doing just shift drag, you can do shift command drag and it will maintain the size of the image inside the frame as well. So that's a nifty trick. That also works for text. You probably won't use this that often in the IDS, but if you want to maintain the size of the text, you do shift drag and it will change it proportionally rather than just doing shift, and that'll just change the text box size. So those are just some interesting tips. Maybe if you have like a typography art head like this, that would be a more useful trick because we really want the body text to say a consistent size all the time, so that shouldn't really change. But anyway, that's just an interesting tip. The next tool is the rectangle tool. So similar to the frame tool, it's basically the same, but it's just used to make a rectangle. This can be an easy way to make like a little alternative coverage box. Maybe if you want to make a 20% gray box, and put, for example, if you have a story and you want to put a little fact in the story, you can just make a gray box and then put it in here, and then you can just put the fact in there and it'll be nice and separated from the story. So that's just one example of using this tool, but if you ever really need any sort of shape, if you hold down on this rectangle tool, there's an ellipse shape in an ellipse tool and a polygon tool. And if you click on the polygon tool, you can actually pick the number of sides. So if I want to make like an octagon for some reason, I can use this tool to make an octagon. So that's cool. If you ever want to make a triangle, that's actually kind of annoying to make without that tool, so it's a nice use for it. And the ellipse tool you can also use to make circles if you hold down shift, so that's cool too if you need a circle. I don't really use these, but here is the gradient tool. This is used if you have a shape like this. So let's take this shape over here. If you use the gradient tool, you can so this just changed the outline of this because down here it was selected on the outline. You have to select the inside and then it'll change the inside. You can make it, if you drag, you can make a gradient. This is kind of like a quick and dirty trick. It's not like that easy to control the gradient, and gradients honestly a lot of times are kind of ugly. They have to be used in like a really good way for them to be good. But I would also recommend, if you're going to make a complicated gradient, to use Illustrator, just because it's a lot easier to control and you can do way cooler things. But sometimes if you just want, maybe for example, you want this photo to have a gradient or something, I don't know, maybe you'd use that. But that would be more actually applicable with this tool. The next one is the gradient feather tool. So that, instead of doing like a gradient of colors like this, it will do a gradient of transparency. So basically if you want to add like a tiny bit of transparency on the bottom so it like fades into nothingness, you can use this tool. It's, again, you can tell it's kind of hard to control. The results are kind of ugly a lot of the time, but if you just want like a subtle thing like this, it's just a quick way to do it. So that's good to have under your belt in case you ever want to have something fade into the background or something. So this tool, the eyedropper, that's a good one. So let's just say this illustration's cool and we decided that we want to make another little thing near it that's the same color, but we don't really know what color it is because this is a placed image. So an easy way to duplicate this color is with the eyedropper tool. If you grab this, click on the green, it'll just become green effortlessly. You can also use the gradient tool or the eyedropper tool with text. It's a little tricky because once you click into text, it's easy to kind of mess up the text, so you gotta be careful. But if you click this text, select the eyedropper tool, click the green, the text will become green. And another cool trick, if you click the eyedropper first and grab green with it, you can highlight over these words and make them green. That looks really ugly, but it's because this is also selected. So just turn that off. And well, I don't know why it keeps doing that. But now that your tool is selecting green, you can make this text turn green. It's a little bit subtle. Let me zoom in. You can tell it'll change each letter you highlight into green. So that's a really, if you have like a few different text things that are far apart and you don't want to individually highlight each one and then grab the tool and then do the green and then do the blah blah blah, this is a much faster way. You can just grab green and then put it on everything you want to be green, or any color. So that's this tool. This tool is the hand, and when you use the hand, you can just move it around. This is pretty nice if you don't have a mouse, you're just using a trackpad. That's what I use. It's kind of stupid to like go through the effort of going over here to grab this, so you can actually do a shortcut for this if you just hold the space bar. If you hold the space bar, it'll let you just grab and drag around so you can navigate yourself around without doing like a ton of scrolling. So that's all the tools over here that you really need to worry about. As a reminder, we've got the selection tool, the text tool, the line tool. These aren't really usually that helpful, but then you need to know the framing tool, the rectangle/shape tool, and the eyedropper tool. Those are the main ones I'd try and remember if I were you, because those are the ones that I use all the time when I'm making these pages. So now that we've gone over these tools, another important thing to know about are these sidebar things. So I'll just go over these. If you have a different view here and you're confused about where to find these, if you go up into Window, you can find all of them. And once you click on one, it will make that one appear on the side over here. So like, for example, if I want overlays, I don't even know what that does, but if I want that to go over here, it'll pop up and then you can just drag it over here and stick it in there and it'll just be more accessible for you. The reason they don't have all of them over there is because people just prefer different ones and you don't want everything to be over there, so they put them on here. And it's very interactive with how your tools are set up, which is kind of a nice thing about Adobe. But it also makes it kind of confusing, so I'm here to explain. This one, the pages one. This is how I added those pages at the beginning, but this is basically just, you don't use it that often, but it's just to control the pages, which if you're designing for us, you really won't need to use this at all because we'll already have made the pages for you and you don't really have to worry about it, but it's good to know it's there. This is the links one. As you can see, this link, a link is just any photo or file that you place into the page. So this one we just added, this one is linked, there's no angry red question mark, but all of these ones, this file shouldn't really be exported right now because it doesn't know where any of these things are. So if you export it, it's just going to have lower quality images. When you use your links, I'll put this in a different tutorial, but you have to put them all on the server. And it's just so we can have them all linked and we can just have high quality images when we export and print out the papers. But I'm just going to close this because the question marks are making me anxious. This is stroke. Sometimes in my designing, I like to make arrows. So let's just say like, oh, I want to make this an arrow. Why is it doing that? So I can just make it a couple points bigger so you can see. There's actually a lot of cool things you can do with this strokes panel. You can change, do you see how this is a hard edge? We can change this into a round edge. So that's a subtle thing, but if you're going for a more round aesthetic, that's a powerful change you can make. And then you can also, if you want to make this a, if you have like a line with a joint like this, if you want this to be rounded too, you can do that here. So now they're both rounded. That's just kind of a stylistic choice, it's up to you. But another thing you can do, you can change it to different types of lines. So there's thick and thick, thick and thin, thin and thick and thin. There's a lot of options. And one that I use frequently is the dotted one. I actually can't remember if I normally use the Japanese dots or not, but they're just closer together. But these are really helpful. Let's see what else. The stroke panel. So this is where the arrows are. Let's just make this normal again. But here you can see that there are a lot of options. There's simple. And then, so you can see here that when I did that, it put it on the wrong side. I actually wanted it to be on this side. So there's an easy switch option. And that just switches the sides. Simple, wide, triangle. I normally use curved, but sometimes I also just use the circle. That's kind of a nice timeline aesthetic. And you can just make it whatever you want if you ever want to use this. There's lots of options. So that's basically all you need to know with stroke. If you're using a file from the IDS, you should have these colors. Specifically, the important one is IDS red. Ooh, look at that beautiful, beautiful red. Another one that we frequently use if you're going to put a graphic in is IDS blue. And yeah, there's just, you can always add a swatch if you want. If you do add swatch, and then you can change the color by double clicking, and you can just enter CMYK value, or you can just create your own color. That's helpful to know. So that's color. Then we have the align. This one is very, very handy. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail here. So alignment is a very important part of our jobs on the design desk. Alignment is hard to understand if you're not a designer, but when you are, you'll start noticing it everywhere and it'll just make you go crazy because so many things are not aligned. But anyway, these squares, let's say I wanted them to be an equal distant apart. One way I could do that is to like tediously count the number of side arrows that I'm going to make them all the same. That takes so long. I'm not that interested in counting, so I'll just use this align tool, and this distribute spacing option will just make them all, oh, well, I have to align it to the selection, and then that will make them all be an equal distance apart, and there's no headaches, and you don't have to do any math, because I know a lot of people don't like math on staff, but anyway. So let's say, like, I'm gonna have this title here, it'll just say IDS, and I'm gonna make it here. So let's just say, like, I want this to be centered with this. So then you can do the center tool. Now to prevent, do you see how this just messed up our previous alignment? Because it averages the distance between them. If you select both of these and then without clicking shift anymore, you just click this again, it'll make this the anchored key object, which will make the IDS above shift to the center of this one. So that's a helpful thing. As you can see, there's a lot of different options and they're pretty self-explanatory. This one will align things to the left. This one will align things to the right. This will align them to the bottom. This will align them to the top, etc., etc. And if you want, you can align it to the page or the margins. So that will align it so that it's equidistant and the two outermost ones are aligned with this purple line. So those are just some things to keep in mind as you align. Aligning at the end is really just like a problem-solving exercise. You just have to figure out the best and fastest way to do it. Just do it the way that works for you. But this is a really helpful way. Okay, so the next thing is the Pathfinder tool, which is another life-saving tool. I use it a lot more in Illustrator, but it's also helpful here. So let's say you want this shape, and this is the shape you want. You want this interesting looking double square shape. So, but you don't want it to be two shapes, you want it to just be one. So what you can do, using the Pathfinder tool, you can combine it. And now it's just one shape, and I can't move one of the squares because they're fused together forever. There's other options. For example, sometimes I want to make a little moon. So if I just make two circles to overlay them on each other, like this, do you see how this moon shape is formed here? We can create that by doing this tool, which will just cut out one of the shapes from the other. So now this moon is here. Let's see, something else you can do. You can make, let's say that we want this square to have the word IDS on it. We love the word IDS. And let's just make it the actual font. So if we convert this to an object, which just makes it from text into an object, put it on top of here. Sometimes you can just make it look transparent by making this white. But sometimes, like, what if I want it to be on a background of something that's not white, like this, that you can't really just pick the color that it looks like. So, if you use the Pathfinder tool to do this, it'll imprint it out so that whatever you put it on top of, it will just have a see-through IDS area, so you don't have to worry about, this seems kind of arbitrary right now, but there are times when you'd want to use this. For example, if you have like an art head and you have a nice photo and you want to put some words that just cut out and leave the actual photo underneath, you can use that tool with Pathfinder. Yeah, there's also this convert shape option, which I don't use very much, but you can just use it to change the type of shape that it is. So, interesting things. It's always interesting to explore InDesign. Anyway, the next thing that you need to know, which is actually really important for designing, is the text wrap tool. So let's just say, for like the example from earlier, I want to put a little graphic within this little story. If I just put the graphic on top of the text, obviously it's hiding the text, which is not good because we want all the text to be shown. So in order to force the text that's under here to go underneath this, we will put a text wrap around this box. And you just click this, and now we can make it see-through and look underneath. There's no text behind it. So sometimes if you want a little bit of extra space under, you can bump up. These are the spaces that it will make the text wrap go on either side of the object. So if you just want to make it go a little lower, you can just do this. It'll go lower. And again, you can see this little red box. So double click, and now it will be just as the size it needs to be to have all the words showing and to have this here. So text wrapping, let's just go over here and show some examples. So if you delete this, you'll see that this story is actually within this giant text box that's 6 columns wide. But since this is text wrapped and this is text wrapped, you can't have any words hidden behind here. So like if we took the text wrap off, you can see that all the text just goes there. So yeah, these two have text wrap. What else? This is another one. It's the exact same type of thing where you can see if you move it around, it'll text wrap around it and there will be never any text behind it. So yeah, that's a good thing to know. And sometimes if you want to make a interesting looking text wrap, like if I want this circle that I'm gonna make to be text wrapping to this, like if I want the text to go around this circle, there's a special kind of text wrap you can do, which is this one, and it will, because if you do this, it'll just be a square. It'll just be a square, but now it's a circle, and it's like interesting. If you want to do that with a photo that's cut out, let me see if I can find it. Let's just say we want this strange image of Bob Knight to be text wrapped. So if we place this, it will be in a frame, like I talked about earlier. So if we put it here and we want the text to be wrapped around these 3 Bob Knight heads, if you just do this, it'll do a square, so it won't go around the heads. But again, since this is an image, when this was wrapping around a shape, InDesign already knows exactly what shape this is. It's a circle, so it was able to put the text wrap in a circular pattern. But since this is an image, InDesign can't really detect these nuanced, weird things. So you have to do this and do detect edges in contour options, and that will do a text wrap. It actually didn't detect the edges very well because his head is white, but if we bump this up, it is better. So you can see this blue line is the text wrap, and it's just going around the border of the inside of this photo. So if you ever need to do text wrap of a cutout photo, that's the method you're going to use. Another thing is character styles, paragraph styles. This you'll use a lot for the IDS. If you select, let's just make a text box. Oops, that's not a text box. If we just fill this with placeholder text, then if you do Command Enter, you can pick the different options we have for the IDS text stylings. So if you want to have it be the story body copy, click body copy. If you want it to be a byline, click byline. If you want it to be a table, a quote. If you want it to be a photo caption, those are all just there. So instead of having to manually go up here, the other option is to go up here, change the text, font, change the size, change all this stuff. It's nice to just have it in here and you don't have to worry about manually doing it yourself. Okay, well, I think that's about all that I will put in this tutorial. I hope you learned something about InDesign, and I hope to design with you soon.